Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the Season 2 premiere of Loki Ouroboros. And I did not like this one. I don't think it was bad, but it was not very well executed and retreaded and just kind of had this awkwardness on what was going on dialogue between the characters. Like, there was a lot of dead space with certain kind of things, and just, it felt very off and weird, and not in the kind of best ways that, like, the first season did. Now, I won't say this is completely and utterly horrible and horrendous, and I don't think any of the actors did a bad job. It's mainly when you're looking at the content of what they're trying to explain and how we're like, okay, we've already kind of done and dealt with this, why are we doing this again? And then getting a little bit more into what we kind of need to. It's mainly down to, like, content and direction. They went a little bit too long with, like, Loki's time skipping, in my opinion, and their whole solution for it was just convoluted to the point of just being like, what? Why are we doing this kind of again? So, we start off this episode from what happened last season. Loki's trying to figure out what's fucking going on. We had seen that Sylvie decided to kill He Who Remains, unleashing all of the branching timelines and pretty much letting that kind of introduce us to King the Conqueror and his other variants that we had seen at, like, the end of Ant-Man Quantumania. But here, we don't really know that yet. We're seeing this, and Mobius doesn't know who Loki is, and so we pretty much get this whole chase sequence. He dives out and hits into a mail carrier thing, which backs into this kind of place. He's like, Casey, do you remember me? It's like, no, I don't know who you are. And the, like, mail thing pretty much almost dies, and he's like, they're probably going to be fine. And then this thing crashes, and then he time skips again, but this time he's back into the present. And Casey's like, oh, okay, but then he keeps, like, shifting back and forth. And we see that Casey goes to Mobius and like, hey, Loki's looking for you. Like, okay. And then we get this one hunter person going to Mobius and be like, oh yeah, and then just does this whole weird kind of spiel to pretty much get him to tell him that, like, this, like, judge's council thing with, like, this general and other judge, docs? Hunter X5, General Dox, and Judge Gamble. Which is weird because one of them's from Game of Thrones. Is like, oh god, not that there's anything bad from them or her being Game of Thrones. It's just the character she played in Game of Thrones was batshit fucking nutty. I'm like, Mwah! So she did. So we essentially just had this kind of conversation where, like, the dude could have just said, hey, General Dox and this Judge Gamble want to talk to you about shit. So they pretty much trundle down. Loki pops back up and they're like, hey, yeah, they're going to the war room. Go for that. All right. And he essentially goes down there. So, Hunter B-15 and Mobius pretty much are telling them, listen, we're all variants. We shouldn't be pruning those timelines. We're committing atrocities here. And they're pretty much trying to come to terms. General Dox is like, I don't give a shit, we should do this shit. And, like, X5, the dude that was pretty much fucking with Mobius, yes, wants to continue on with that kind of route and kind of go after Sylvie. The judge pretty much says that they're not going to be pruning any more timelines, and after they've learned this kind of stuff, it's kind of nice to be like, hey, yeah, we've been doing weird shit. And Loki, of course, is getting funneled back and forth between the present and the past at this point, though granted he does time skip into the future, but then he pops back and he's like, listen, Mobius, and then he pretty much down dirty, we take an inordinate amount of time pretty much trying to data dump all the stuff that he has dealt with, talking about Sylvie killing he who remains, and he takes the pretty much pruning rod from X5 and blasts through the kind of timekeepers thing to show it's this dude. This dude's behind it all. His variants are going to create, like, a war We even see like a Kang War thing going on at this one spot, and that he knows that their memories have been erased, but he's gonna be popping up. We're gonna have a multiversal war, which yes is an important bit, and I think that Marvel should have like saved this for the end. If you were structuring a 3-act kind of thing, I think that what we had with Infinity War, with the Infinity Gauntlet and everything, nice good setup. I think that we should have done something else for this kind of center. Probably dealing with, if you're going to be introducing time travel, having introduced Ultron and used him as the overarching villain, and then ending with Kang. At least that way you have Doom and everything involved, and multiversal stuff. Then you can like do a reboot, and then kind of change up stuff like that. However, that's not what's going on at this point, but we'll see how this kind of works out. So a lot of it is just pretty much data dumping. No, not data dumping. Data dumping of Loki, of like what Sylvie was doing, how they kind of fought, but then he got pushed through a door of the time door for He Who Remains' jump pad, and that they don't know where Sylvie is. And the general decides to just go after Sylvie. Good luck. Don't know why you're going after her. I mean, granted, she's a variant and you're kind of going after her because that's your kind of job. That has been up to this point. But it's just more like to give them something to do in an antagonistical force that Sylvie probably has to deal with, that Loki's got to kind of help her out with. But then they also remark about how it looks horrible that Loki is time skipping, and we don't have an idea why. It's just something that needs to be solved for this episode. So Mobius gets the idea to go down to this like repair and advancement place and see if they know what's kind of going on with this. So they go down, and then we get introduced to Ouroboros, Obi, who Mobius came down, and we just get like the kind of awkwardness that I was like, oh yeah, it's been 400 years, Mobius. No, you just came down here because you got off on the wrong floor, and then you left immediately. And Mobius trying to play it off like, oh, that kind of sucks. And he's like, they just pretty much wait around until Loki time skips. He's like, oh, he's time skipping. He shouldn't be able to do that. And he time skips into the past. And then pretty much tries to get Ouroboros to understand the situation, and then pretty much creates this kind of plan of attack in the future. Now, the cool kind of bit is that Loki's talking to him in the past and kind of giving him the information, and then Obi's able to kind of like bring that shit out in the present, learning that they need to utilize a temporal ore extractor, and that Loki's got to prune himself in this like green space kind of thing, and then Mobius puts this thing out near the temporal loom to like pull him out. It's honestly really kind of convoluted for no kind of reason. There could have been any kind of other way for them to do this, even in the kind of comics where you could probably do an anchoring setting or something like that with some kind of even fucking watch or whatnot, and localize Loki's time timestamp to a certain kind of time branch or whatnot. Kind of similar to the GPS thing that's probably utilized in Endgame. It's just weird. It's like, alright, sure, okay. And it's like either Loki succeeds or he gets pruned and dead, and Mobius tries to do this thing and pretty much gets his skin peeled off. The way we then get explained of what's kind of going on, getting his skin peeled off is the kind of worst, not even the worst, like the least worst thing that would happen in that kind of instance. Because the way it's described, it essentially goes along the lines of he went out there, he would essentially happen like the Last Crusade, where he picked the wrong grail and he just fucking thunderdusts and fucking dies. But it did introduce some interesting stuff, as we see that Loki's trying to do this. He's going down there. They get to this temporal loom, which is pretty kind of cool. I had to look this up for some notes, because the temporal loom is the heart of the TVA. It's where raw time is refined into physical timeline. It's not constructed to weave together so many new branches, so it's overloading. Because OB was kind of freaking out. It's like, shit. Power surges, all these timelines branching off, it's not made to handle and weave together all these things, which is like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And if you go out there, you like age because of time It's almost like time solar winds is how I describe it. Blasting and pretty much thunder aging things. So we see that Mobius draws skin in the dust of this one computer, and that's important because Loki then time skips before they're able to do the kind of stuff that they need to. And he is now in the future trying to look for a pruning rod. And it just kind of goes along with that route as we then back and forth. Mobius puts on this suit, and Obi's like, hey, listen, it'll age the suit, but you gotta book it and come back. And they essentially put the extractor, launch it out into the timeline that it's trying to kind of construct, and he's kind of waiting out there. Loki kind of fiddles around, but actually you see this phone ringing, and then he's able to see Sylvie. Sylvie in the future, but then he somebody prunes him from behind for some reason, and it's in the green kind of zone, so it's like, all right. I guess we'll see what kind of works with that, but Loki then gets pulled out, and he's now, I guess, localized to this time? Alright, and him and Mobius are alright and pulled back in, and they're like, alright, we got this done, so let's kind of see what's going on. We see that the general's pretty much sending out all these forces to go after Sylvie, and then we get a kind of little mid-credit scene where Elvie enters a timeline in 1982 Bronxton, Oklahoma, and visits a McDonald's. That's really it. It's the quintessential bad tease, i.e., nothing really much is done and just teases really nothing without giving you really anything to kind of hook on to. Like the Council of Kang, at least is a tease of like, ah shit, we got weird fucking shit going on. She just like goes into Bronxton, Oklahoma, which has ties to Asgard and everything, at least from the comics, and goes in there and she asks for something without like a face and all that's gonna like a chicken McNugget. She's like, I want to try everything. I'm like, okay, it's leading more to like she's gonna try every kind of timeline, I believe, but it's the most ominous and kind of vague thing that's kind of there. I don't need to be like spoon-fed or explained a whole kind of thing, but this is just like, okay, she's in a McDonald's and the register dude at the back is like, alright, I guess she wants one of everything. Let's kind of see how this goes. And that's it. It's like, alright. And we know this is our Sylvie because of how her getup looks similar to when we went with He Who Remains, whereas the Sylvie that we see in the future has a different hairstyle, different kind of clothes, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how to feel about this one. This had a lot of dead space, and I mean, the characters, and when this was on point in the first season, you're like, okay, this is good, I can handle this. This had a little bit of ups and downs, but this one was just like, wow, we're retreading all this stuff that we already knew. Which, I understand getting other characters up to speed, but there's gotta be better ways to do it, and honestly, I don't know why Loki was time-skipping. Sure, there could be an explanation for it, but we're going through this whole episode trying to fix that kind of problem, almost to just have a problem to fix, because it doesn't make sense why he's time-skipping. Because this is kind of like the first time we kind of have deal with this kind of problem. It's like, alright, is it because He Who Remains died? What's kind of going on here? Would this be happening to other variants as well? And if so, why? It's just a uniquely Loki problem at this point, and we'll have to see if they're able to kind of like hash it out. My biggest issue was like the execution of this, where there felt like a lot of dead space. It felt like a lot of dialogue didn't really mean much and was more just trying to like hit certain kind of things, and all over the place with certain kind of directions of what they were attempting to do here. Not that it went back and forth between tone or anything, it's just like, okay, why are we focusing on this? Why are we doing this? I don't know. This was a very strange episode for me. I don't hate it, and I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it worked very well. And especially to set up and knock off our second season for this. And if you liked it, that's cool. I'm glad for you, and I'm happy. I know it's weird that I keep reiterating this on any kind of review, but it's not my objective to shit on something that people like. If you like it and you're able to explain it for me better, I always like that. And even if I don't come over to liking it, hearing that kind of point of view and understanding why it kind of works out for you definitely helps. I'm like, okay, cool. This one, I just don't know. Sure, we'll see if there's any more behind OB and what's going on. The temporal loom is definitely a big, interesting kind of lore piece that could get us a lot of interesting things going forward. It's taking disparate timelines and merging them into one. Similar to kind of like Battle World from Secret Wars 2015. Where all these universes and timelines were mashed together by Doctor Doom. There's some different kind of changes that could be introduced. However, the Beyonders need to be introduced. Different kind of cosmic level entities have to be introduced to understanding. That's why I think the Eternals is going to be important, and definitely Thor Love and Thunder of Eternity and the Celestials. They explain how certain things are created, certain kind of levels in the universes, and what certain kind of power sets go forward. Why you also need these kind of things to also introduce Galactus probably in the Fantastic Four as well. But I don't know, we'll see how this goes. There were ups and downs with the Loki first season, I will admit. It didn't really start getting into it until there were some interesting kind of things going on in certain episodes. But this one just baffled me. I'm like, alright, let's see how this goes. So, those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.